All right, welcome in everyone. Master Dungeons here. Welcome to another episode of Dungeons and Deliberations. It's where we just talk with people and viewers if they have any questions or answer questions from our Discord server, community server as well. Plus, I've been doing some, starting last week, we started doing a little bit of Roll20 tutorials for DMs that might be new to the VTT. Players, of course, as well, that are new to the VTT. Last week, of course, we walked through creating characters, creating handouts, creating your monsters, pardon me, adding your PDFs. If, for example, you go to the Dungeon Masters Guild and are able to purchase some different adventures or things of that nature, you can always put them in PDFs in your game as well. Of course, we will get to that in a little while. We wanted to thank everyone also that tuned in on Sunday for our live play game of Keys from the Golden Vault. We did finish the first adventure, the Murkmire Malevolence. We're starting next week on Sunday with a brand new level 2 adventure. And we are going to have another player joining us this Monday. EB is going to be coming in. We're going to be getting a character together tomorrow, hopefully, and get him caught up on all of the character backgrounds and get him up to speed with the Golden Vault and get him to play with us on Sunday evenings as well. And as I figured, just on cue, my familiar would wake up just when the stream starts. So you might have to listen to her meow a little bit if she decides to come upstairs here. She does get a little loud as she is a rescue kitty and she's a little deaf. So she's really loud trying to find us. But let me see here. I think Otter said something about asking a question early on. So Otter, if you're out there watching, go ahead and post that question there in the chat for me if you want to. I do have a few other questions. Yes, that is you. Some other questions that some viewers had asked me off stream and off of in the Discord via private message and stuff like that. I'll try to answer some of those as well. One of them, of course, was, do I play other games besides D&D? For tabletop RPGs, I haven't played other RPGs in a while, but I have, lots of my favorites are Cyberpunk. Not a big, nothing wrong with Shadowrun. I just don't like to mix my genres. But Cyberpunk, I played a lot of Rollmaster back in the day, Champions. Things of that nature. Do you have any favorite spells you think are underutilized in play due to their creative uses? I think there are lots of illusory spells that are underutilized in play just because some DMs aren't really sure how to use them. Oftentimes a lot of players aren't really sure how to use them as DMs are really worried about whether it's going to have some sort of major mechanical effect most of the time because players are expecting some sort of illusion to have some sort of significant effect when indeed they are just illusions. But there are a lot of different creative ways that players can use illusory spells. Minor Illusion Cantrip is fairly underused. You can use to be distracting on a battlefield. It can be used to distract something like like in the heists that we play on for the Golden Vault on Sunday evenings. It could be used as a distraction. Lots of cantrips that aren't obviously, most people when they think of cantrip think of like Firebolt or Chill Touch or Toll the Dead or things that do damage. But lots of different spells that are out there that are more for controlling a battlefield, basically support types of spells that you don't see a lot of players using because the first thing that most players and DMs go to is combat spells, things that do damage and such. But yeah, there's a lot of illusory spells out there, I think. Could be definitely used more for creative purposes. Especially if the DM and the players all kind of work together to figure out exactly what they're trying to do with it, and if what the player's trying to do is something a little bit more than what the spell actually does, then the DM can say, hey, okay, well, maybe it can do this up to this certain level for you. But if you want to do something more with it, we might want to maybe look at getting a different spell. That's why I like to work with the players when they're picking spells for their spell books, or for their different classes when they're prepping spells, whether it be a druid, cleric, etc. Things along those lines. But another question, going back to the other thing about other games. I love superhero games too. We used to play a lot of Marvel superheroes, Champions. Let me see. We played lots of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. The grittiness and the whole chaos lurking behind every corner was really cool. I used to play a little bit of Call of Cthulhu back in the day, but and don't get me wrong, the Cthulhu mythos and H.P. Lovecraft and everything he's done, all of his work back in the early 20th century was really great. But I got to the point with Call of Cthulhu where it just became, one of those things where I really like playing it, but at the same time, it's always inevitable that your character is going to go insane, and you're going to, either drop down into the depths of insanity, or you're going to be killed by, elder evils and such like that. So it became a situation where I kind of dropped out of those games just because there was no. I didn't really feel the heroicness of those types of games. Of course, Warhammer Fantasy had a similar feel to it, but there was always that opportunity for the heroes to overcome. Also, the question was, do I play video games? Because we have been doing on Thursdays and Fridays our streams for Dungeon Delving and Around the Campfire, and we're playing currently Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition on Thursdays, and Fridays we're playing Lord of the Rings Online. I do play other video games. When it comes to consoles, I played a little bit recently, maybe a little bit of Red Dead Redemption 2. And I play FIFA a lot. That's my main go-to on console. It's one of my favorite sports. I know I'm an American, so I have to call it soccer, but I do call it football. I am a massive Chelsea FC fan. We won today against Dortmund. And play FIFA for video games on the computer PC. I do play a bunch of different games. I do have, as I mentioned about our streams, I do have Celestia, the Crown of the Magisteer, which I have not had a chance to really play. I've gotten about halfway through the tutorial, and I kind of stopped because I thought it would be really great to do something like that for the Master Dungeons channel here on Twitch, to maybe play that. I do play a really fun game. It's technically still in alpha. I think we're getting ready to have Alpha 21 come out, but it is a zombie survival horror game called 7 Days to Die. It's a really fun game. A lot of creative stuff you can do. It's crafting, survival horror, and then probably my favorite game right now is Dead by Daylight. I remember back in 2015 hearing about the game. I believe I got into a late beta. I really don't even remember what my account was. It was so long ago. And then I kind of forgot about the game, getting more into, of course, playing D&D. But this past, I think it was July or August, my friend told me about it. Actually, it was July because he was helping me move into our new home. And I went ahead and purchased it on Steam, downloaded it, really didn't play it much until Halloween came around, and they had a huge sale, so I bought all the DLC for it, and I've been, if I'm not working on D&D, if I'm not working on other stuff, if I'm not doing chores around the house for the wife, I am definitely playing Dead by Daylight, is most of what I'm doing outside of Dungeons & Dragons. But yeah, so next week, of course, we'll have a stream every Tuesday at, as of right now, 6 p.m. Eastern. So if you have any questions or anything like that about D&D, about DMing, about even playing, because that's one of the things we want to do too, especially with the stream that we do on Sunday evenings, is that not only do we want to help DMs learn about different situations and how to deal with those in the games as well. We also want players to kind of, to help new players out, to help navigate the pitfalls when you first become a player for D&D, learning, player etiquette, what's, waiting your turn, not trying to dominate the whole game, not trying to dominate the conversations, not trying to make every roll, kind of like spreading out that fun to allow certain characters, like, you may be a bard that has jack of all trades, but that doesn't mean you have to make every roll. For example, the rogue should probably be making investigations for the traps and such. The druid should probably be making nature checks or animal handling checks, etc. However, the cool thing about being a jack of all trades with the bard is that when it comes up and no one has that skill, there you go. So those types of situations that we're wanting to help new players with, to understand the etiquette of not only being a solid game master, but also being a solid player and a solid teammate when it comes to playing D&D. So let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and jump into what we were talking about last week with Roll20. Last week we did mention, this is back to our test run page, our test run game that we created last week. We did walk through creating the different characters. This is a player character that we talked about last week. We created a goblin monster using some of the free assets that were in the free assets in your art library. Again, that's the second little tier up here. We were able to create a goblin, pulling it out of the compendium straight into the character sheet. And then, of course, we did attach from that art library. We attached a little icon top down of a goblin for you could use with your PCs. We also went through the notes. We go to delete that little guy. We went through the notes as well, how to create a note, and we created a little thing of, hey, adventurers, come, meet for a quest, stranger or whatever, and walk through that. So tonight, what we're going to do is, pardon me, we're going to walk through adding maps to your Roll20 room. So what you want to do, I did get a couple of maps that I downloaded to give examples of. I'm also going to pull out a few maps from my art library to put those onto the map layer as well. So first, let's just start with the basic maps and the pages. So up here, this is your page toolbar. And basically what it is that it will have each page of the different maps that you put out into your room. So obviously we're here at the starting page. We'll go ahead and put a map here on our start page. Then I'll show you how you can either create a new page here or there's shortcuts as well. So like if you go next to one of the pages, like this one here, obviously you can delete the page. You can deal with the settings, duplicate it to copy it, or you can just move over a little bit to the right and it'll pull up this little green plus sign, which allows you to create a new page as well. So you can go all the way up here, or you can just move a little bit over to the right of the current page or a page nearby and create a new page. So let's go ahead and we're already on the start page. So the toolbar is closed. We're going to go ahead and go over here. Again, these are your layers. You have your map and background, your objects and tokens, your game overlay, and your dynamic lighting. We're going to wait a little while before we get into the dynamic lighting, and we're going to show you something tonight's called a fog of war, which makes it really simple and easy for you as the dungeon master. Then once you get into dynamic lighting later on, it does obviously make it a lot easier, but a fog of war is pretty easy to use when you first start. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our map and background layer. So that's going to put us on this little icon here. Obviously, it doesn't change much on the screen, but we are on the layer now where we place maps and things along those lines. So we're going to go. I'm going to go over here and pull up a road map, just a simple map. I'm going to drag it out here. I'm going to drop it. Now, sometimes what Roll20 will do is they just added a new feature. For just throwing in a regular map, it's going to throw it into the screen. Now what it's going to do is this new feature that's popped up in the last few months is they can adjust the page's size to fit the image that you just pulled in, or they can resize the image to fit the page. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and say adjust page size so that it will adjust the size of the page. The pages come out nominally as a 25 by 25 grid. You can always change those, as I mentioned. You can come up into your page settings and change like the width and the number of pixels. You can do the different such there. You can also change the different cells. Like this is 35.7 something by 36.7, 36 point something. Obviously right here you can also, no, I shouldn't say obvious, my apologies. Right here where it says grid cell distance, that tells you how large each square is. So standard maps in D&D are 5 feet squares. Some of them you can create with bigger maps, create them as 10-foot squares to show the scale of that. And again, my familiar is chirping back there. We'll get to her in a little bit. So what you can do is you can go through, check your map. It doesn't look too bad. I mean, everything's fairly nice size. It creates it about 20 feet wide over here, maybe a little less. We can always, again, grab our ruler and check the distance. It's about 20 feet, something like that between all of these squares here. Which is not a bad size for your map. If you wanted to change that up a little bit, you can always change the size of the map by going up here. We want to go ahead, let's change our map back to a 25 by 25. Oops. We'll save the settings. Now what's going to happen is obviously it's going to go through and change the size of what we view of the map. There's still a lot of areas of the map over here that's not on the screen. There's still a lot of the map down below that's not on the screen. What we can do then is, again, we're still on the map layer. If we want to resize that map back down to the 25, is we come through, we grab the map, we pull it over here a little bit, and you can adjust the size by dropping it down this way. And then we can always check the size of the map, make sure if we're still missing anything from it. We can go over here, see how much more is over there. There's a lot more over there. So we can come back here, go ahead and resize again. And then we can check to see if we've got anything extra, a little bit extra on the other side there. So we'll just try it one more time. And that should put us about, yep, right there, there we go. Not much on the bottom there as well. So you can have it fit to it, or you can reshape like if we would have chosen reshape the image to the map size. It would have actually created the map that you just pulled in, this map of the wilderness would have been resized to this 25 by 25. As you notice, there is grid out here as well. You can lightly see the grid on the map. You can also change that in your settings for the page settings. So you go up to your page toolbar, come to the map that you're on, and go to our page settings. And basically what we do is you have a background color. So say, for example, your map isn't exactly the right size. It might have like a little thin border around the outside. You can change the background of what's seen there to a different color. You can also change the grid. So like if you want to use something that's hex instead of square, you can have all these different choices for your grid on there. You can also turn your grid off to where there's no grid on there. It doesn't lock tokens or anything of that nature. But you can also change the color and opacity of your grid itself. Generally, I like to, unless the players have an issue with it, I generally like to go ahead and pull the opacity all the way up. When we save the settings, you'll be able to see the grid lines a little bit clearer. Some GMs will like to leave the grid on, but then just go ahead and turn the opacity all the way off. That way there's no grid out there for the players to see, and it's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. You get more immersion, I guess, which is fine. It all depends on what the preference is of the DM and the players. Of course, you can change the color. When I run Descent into Avernus, I'll change it to more of a like a bloodish red color to represent being down in the Nine Hells. I think we went with when we were doing Curse of Strahd. I think the color we went with was like more of a black type of color, something like that. Of course, you can do the old school color for the grid from the old days of hex or of graph paper and everything, and you can do like the bright blue or the green or the duller blue color for that graph paper feel to it from back in the day. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we do have our page here. This is the starting map that we have. It's a little outdoors for like an outdoor encounter, perhaps some bandits alongside the road, maybe some orcs or something like that laying an ambush for the characters. So let's go back over here to the map and let's go ahead and look a little bit more at the settings for each of the map pages. Give me a second here. I'm going to grab a little drink. So again, this is the size of your map, your background, the cell distance. If you're using like overland maps or anything like that, you can change it from feet, meters, kilometers, miles, all that. Even do a hex or a custom distance if you want. Again, the measurements, I have it, it's automatically standard set to D&D 5e, 4e compatible. You can obviously have a couple of different measurements as well. You see we've got Pathfinder and 3.5 in there. You can also change the cell width. So for example, right now, instead of us going up here to change this grid cell distance to 10, which would make each one of these blocks 10 feet, we could actually go down here if we had a rather large map, and we could change the cell width here to 0.5, which would then in turn make each one of these squares 10 feet, and then it would also resize the tokens. So when you pull the tokens out there, like for example, if you played the Curse of Strahd, and you go into Strahd, into the Castle Ravenloft, a lot of those maps are rather large. But once you get up over a 50 by 50 square here in Roll20, your load time is going to be a lot more of an issue. Some players with a little bit slower computers and such like that, their browser is going to slow down. It's going to be sluggish. So if you're playing out there and you're wondering why, hey, I've got this map, why is it so slow on loading? Why are the players having issues with it? It might be because you're over that 50 by 50. I myself don't like to go over like 35 by 35, maybe 40 by 40. Now you can go a little bit longer as long as your the width isn't as wide. You can go a little bit wider as long as the height and such isn't as wide as well. But when you're doing something, over 40 by 40, or once you get up to 50 by 50, that's kind of going to be the limit. Otherwise, you're going to start slowing not only your performance, but your player performance is going to suffer as well with the maps. So consider the idea of, if you have a rather large map, instead of, making it 100 by 100, go ahead and make it 50 by 50 and then change your cell width down to 0.5, and it will make those squares a bit smaller for the players. Now, for movement, this has to do with your dynamic lighting, which we'll get to that again maybe a week or two down the road. But what we're going to work with now is called the Fog of War. Now, when you turn on the Fog of War, what's going to happen is that the screen for all the players is basically going to be black. They won't be able to see anything on the map, and you'll still be able to see a little bit. Like, this is your GM darkness opacity, so when you turn the Fog of War on, that determines how dark it's going to be for you. So if we turn on the Fog of War, that makes it to where basically, again, the screen is dark for the players, but you'll still be able to pretty much be able to see things on the map. Let's go to objects and tokens here. That way we're on the map that the players are on. Let's go ahead and pull out our goblin here. Let's act as if those the goblins are the PCs. So the PCs would see nothing. And what you want to do to reveal areas is you come over here and you see this little cloud icon. This is for when you're using the standard Fog of War. What you'll do is you can reveal areas just by dragging over like this. You can just say, okay, I'm going to reveal this area, and that area is revealed, so the players would be able to see everything that you just revealed there. And you can go through and do it that way, and okay, you've gone through here. It's really simple and easy to do when you first start off, but there might be things that you want to hide here and there. So let's go ahead and you can always reset the Fog of War by going back over to where that little cloud icon is. Obviously, if you pick a different command there, it'll change that icon. But we'll go ahead and reset the fog. It'll just reset the fog for you. And instead, what we can do is we can do what's called a polygon reveal. And a polygon reveal is instead of having that square, it just goes in different areas that you select. So we select this and go back up, and it just reveals that little area. Now, what's really cool about this, both the reveal areas command and the polygon reveal area, is that, let's go ahead and reset our fog. If you hold down shift, it will actually lock onto the corners for you. So if we want to do a polygon reveal around this area here, then we wanted to reveal this area out here and kind of have a little bit more control over the area that we're showing to the players. It will give us a little bit more control on that and be able to reveal areas a little bit easier. That's really helpful if you're doing dungeons and dungeon crawls. So for your Fog of War, especially for dungeon crawls, it's better to use the polygon reveal. If you're doing outside areas, just the normal reveal areas would be just fine for those situations. So let's reset our fog. Then let's just go ahead and turn off the Fog of War. Again, back in your page settings, you can just scroll down, turn off your Fog of War, and save the settings. And it's just an open daylight for traveling through the wilderness there. So as I mentioned, let's go ahead and create a second page that we had shown you earlier. We can go over here and create a new page. We can go over here to the right and bring up the little green bar. Let's just go ahead and use the normal create new page. Okay, so to title, as you notice, the new page popped up. It says untitled. Right here we have start. You can just click on the name and you can rename it. So we can go wilderness. Oops. And then hit return, and that names that map wilderness for us. We're going to name this one dungeon. So we'll put a dungeon in there. And then we're going to move over there in a second. Now, something I can tell you, you might be wondering what this red badge here is, that says players on it. That is the map that the players are on. When you want to move them to a new map, you just simply open your page toolbar here. You grab that banner that says players, and you move them over to the new map. So the new player is now on the dungeon map. If you happen to have players that are moving on different maps, like someone goes up the stairs and everyone else stays downstairs, what you can do is you'll notice like the avatars or the names will pop up, depending on where you place them. If you want to have them at the top of the screen, at the bottom of the screen, if I have 3 or 4 players in my game, their names would pop up all down here. Basically what I would do is I grab the box with their name in it and drag it up to whatever map I wanted them to be on. And then that person would be on this map while the rest of the players were on this map. You want to put them all back together, you just simply grab the player's little banner over here and you'll be able to drag it back over to the player's banner and it'll put them all back together on the same map. So let's go to the dungeon. Let's go ahead and pull one out of my art library. Let's go with map first. And let's find a really cool, interesting dungeon map that we can put in here. Yeah, let's do this. No, I probably should have thought about this ahead of time. Be a little bit more prepared. But let's just go ahead and pull out one of these maps from Brime the Frost Maiden. Let's charge some of these up here. Yeah, let's go with the Elven Tomb. So we're going to pull that out. Now, what will happen is because it's in my art library and I didn't import it on its own, it's just going to pop out as especially since we're also on the objects and tokens layer, it'll pop out just as a little square that you'll have to fix. So what we'll do instead is let's go ahead and delete that. We'll go to the maps background and we'll pull out the Elven Tomb again. And again, it'll ask to fit it to page or adjust the page size. Let's go ahead and, for this time, I'll go ahead and adjust the page size again. Now, what we'll see is that it did adjust the page size to the map, but as you can tell, we'll turn up the grid. So, we'll come to that later. We'll turn up the grid so we can see the grid a little bit better. Now we'll notice that the actual grid of the map itself is not lined up to the grid of the page itself. There are a couple of ways to fix that. One is to align the map to the grid. And what you can do for that is, what it'll ask you to do is it'll look for a 3x3 section for you to align the map to the grid. So what we can do is we can right click on the map, we can go to advanced, and then we can go to align to grid. And what that'll do next is it'll ask us for a 3x3 section, 9 blocks to align the grid. So what you can do also, again, as I mentioned, you can zoom in. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these 3 right here. And of course, it's just a guesstimate. Get as close as you can to that 9x9 grid, or I'm sorry, 3x3 grid. And then select that, and then just click Align to Grid. And it's going to try to align, at least make the size of the map fairly close to what your dimensions are here. Now, as I mentioned, right now, this page is only 29 by 20, but it did make that map over 50 in size. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and change the map size itself. Dungeon, we'll go ahead and 55 by 55, which we can fix here in a little bit. So what that's going to do is it's going to give us a little bit of room on the bottom. It's going to give us a little bit of room on the sides to adjust the map. Now what we're going to do to adjust this map, and hopefully Dante Shin, you're out there watching, this will help out a little bit. First thing we'll need to do is we'll need to make the map, as it stands right now, the map is a token on the map layer that will resize according to where we move it on the map. It'll kind of automatically resize it. The problem is that we need to adjust it to where these the lines on the printed map itself, or the actual map itself, are the same as the lines on the Roll20 page. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click the map, we're going to come over here and we're going to turn it into a drawing. That way it doesn't automatically, like if we come down to the corner over here or the bottom, when you move it, it's going to automatically try to resize to the nearest line on the map itself. As a drawing, we can move it around and all of that, and it doesn't snap to the actual page. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to line up our squares so that, and again, this is an instance where we're talking about the color of the background earlier. We're going to align the page to where the easiest way for us to align the page to the different lines on the map. So we're going to go right there for now. That way at least these up here look fairly good. Obviously there's going to be a little bit being off here and there. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. So we notice that these lines are going to the right a little bit too much. So we're going to go over here, try to fix those first. And line those up as best we can. Now it might mess up the ones on the left side of the map, so we'll scroll back over here and see that it has brought those off just a little bit, which is fine. That way we just come over here and adjust them from this side. All right, so now we have the go through and check. All the up and down is good. All the vertical lines are good. Now we just got to work on the horizontal lines. Again, you'll notice that they're just a little off up here at the top, which we can fix here in a moment. They're off some on the bottom. So we want to come over here to the bottom, and we want to pull this down a little to fix the horizontal lines here. That's fairly good. And we'll go ahead and scroll up here just to see how it looks at the top. So what we're going to have to do at the top is that's going to actually have to go up a little bit. So then we're going to go ahead and pull this up. And now everything's all set up with the grid on the map and the grid on the actual map layer. Now you'll notice then that we have a bunch of extra stuff that a bunch of extra tiles that we really don't need, so we're going to scroll out a little bit. We can count those down. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we're going to go to the width, and we're going to take that down 15, which takes us down to 40. All right, so that does that there. Then we're going to go ahead and check it down here at the bottom as well. Scroll out a little bit more. We've way too many, so let's just go ahead and drop it by 10 first. Actually, we'll probably drop it by 20. Oops, a little too much. Put it to 30, then we'll see what we need to get rid of. So only 2 more there, so we can drop it down to 28. And then what we can do, because you obviously want the whole map on there, you could take it down an extra 1 all the way around if you wanted to, which would still be just fine, but you would kind of clip the map a little bit. So what we can do instead is we can go over and just change the background color, as we mentioned before. So we can go to the background color, we can change it. Again, we have the whole palette here. You can change it to specific colorations down here if you want. Since this is an Icewind Dale map, let's just pick like a darker blue color for the outline, and that way the outline of the map, the background, is that color there. And we've aligned our map for the Elven Tomb from Rime of the Frostmaiden. It does take a little bit of time getting used to. Do you pull something up or down? Do you pull it in or out? And again, that's just a little bit of practice. Once you get into realizing how the lines are off and along those lines, you'll be able to get a lot better at it. Like I said, with anything, it takes practice and a little bit of time. For example, this would be a great time for us to go ahead and turn off the grid, since the map itself already has a grid on there. So we could turn off the grid. Well, actually, I shouldn't say turn it off. We could turn the opacity all the way down. That way, the only grid that's really on there is the grid from the map itself. So it's already all lined up. The players will be able to move their tokens around on the page, and it'll still fit into the little boxes for the map. For the map that's on there. Now, with your maps, again, going back up here to the different, your outside, your dungeons inside, going back to what we were talking about earlier with the Fog of War. What we can do on this one, let's go ahead and turn the Fog of War on this. You can hit reset fog here, and it'll ask you if you want to turn on the Fog of War. What we're going to do is just go ahead, again, go back up to the page settings, turn on the Fog of War, and then save settings, so that, say for example, the PCs are coming in over here. Now, pinging is something else you can do on your maps as well. If you hold down your left click button, it'll ping. And that color of the ring that pops up is the actual color that you have down here on your name. If you want to change that color to like, you want to be able to players be able to see it easier, so you want to make it to a yellow, you can ping, and that'll bring up on the map, and everybody will see the ping if they're in that area of the map. Players can do it too. The players can ping things on the map. Now, if you want to ping a certain area and then have all of the players see where that area is, hold down your shift key and then ping. Like, say for example, I wanted them to bring their attention to this entrance down here. I would hold down my shift and then hold down my left mouse button to ping that area, and it shifts the whole map view for everyone that's watching it, looking at the map, down to that area there. So now, now we have the Fog of War. We want to reveal certain areas. Again, as I mentioned, you can always use your just drag and open those areas. It's fairly simple and fairly easy as they're traveling through. They can see, hey, there's the map. Here's these areas here. You can easily do it in that way. Also, going back to, as we mentioned, the dungeon crawls and such, if we go to reset the fog again, we'll come over to the polygon reveal. Now this gives you a little bit more control. You can either hold down your shift and go from square to square, or you can just go around the area where the players are going to be and just say you want to just do this room here. You just go around the outside of the room. You can do it more carefully if you want. That will reveal just that room. You can do the specific hallway with the polygon reveal and reveal just the hallway for the players. Doing it this way does take a little bit of extra time than doing the other reveal. Again, it's aesthetics, depending on how you want it to look, and the preferences of the players and the dungeon master. This does look a little bit more streamlined from the player perspective. Obviously, as the DM, it's not going to really change much of what you see on the screen. But the players it's a little bit more streamlined for the players for using it in that manner. They're using the polygon reveal instead of the just reveal areas. As I mentioned before, dynamic lighting is a little bit more tricky. It's not that difficult, to be honest, but it is a little bit to learn. It definitely does make things easier and faster. Because what happens is that the tokens themselves will have vision, and like depending on if they have like a light spell where the token will emit, or a torch where the token will emit 20 feet of bright light, and then it'll emit, after that it'll emit 20 feet of dim light. So with the tokens on the board, they'll actually have sight that will see through the darkness. They'll stop at walls, they'll stop at doors. If they have dark vision of 60 feet, it'll see through there. If they have like 120-foot dark vision, it'll see up to the barriers on there. That way it makes it easier, so you don't have to actually pause the game to reveal different areas. But when you're first starting off, to be honest, really almost everyone that I know that started off with Roll20 has always used the just reveal areas as the players get in. Just being careful not to reveal things outside the area that you want that you're wanting to reveal. Just being a little bit careful in that regard. So basically, that's how you set up a map. Let's go ahead and go back to our initial map here in the wilderness. Now what we're going to do, since we've set up the map, what we're wanting to do is we're going to want to populate that map. So let's real quick go back through. We've got a goblin already created. Let's go ahead and real quick add another character. We're going to make this an orc. Oops. Let's find an orc here in our free assets for the token. Searching our purchases takes a little bit of time. Let's go back down here to the free ones. Orcs, ogres, and trolls. We're going to grab this orc here. We're going to set it up there. That same orc, pull it over here. Say OK. It'll ask us what type of character sheet. Once again, we select NPC. Then we come over to monster, search orc. We'll find an orc here from the monster manual. If you don't have the monster manual, it'll come from the SRD. I believe there's orcs in there as well. A lot of the staple D&D creatures will be in there. So we have our orc created. Now, say you want to have your monsters on different areas. This is where your GM layer comes into play. So what we do is say, okay, well, we got a couple goblins out here on the road that are kind of basically being decoys for the PCs. So the goblins are kind of out here, maybe they're arguing or there's acting like they're big and bad, trying to stop the adventurers. But the adventurers don't realize that there's some orcs waiting in ambush. So what you can do is you go ahead and you go over to your GM layer, your GM info layer, and we'll drag some orcs out here. And we'll put an orc over here behind this tree. We'll put an orc over here behind this rock. We'll put an orc down here in these bushes as well. And then we'll put a fourth one, let's say, over here. By this bush or tree right over here. So on the object token layer, the only thing that the PCs will see is they will only see the goblins, and they'll react in a certain way or whatever. And then if combat starts out and you say, okay, well, on this start of round 2, you happen to notice that there's some other creatures lying in ambush, and you just simply go back over to your GM layer, and each one of those tokens, you click on it, go to the layer, and move it to the token layer. And then that's how you bring out things from your token layer for the PCs, for the ambushes, things along those lines. Again, you can put multiple things on the GM layer. You can put notes. You can put little things that the players might not know about. Like you can put information up here about what's happening in the round. Like round 1, this happens. Round 2, this happens. Round 3, this happens. That way it's on the map, and you don't have to necessarily put it into a handout. That's another quick shortcut that you can make for that as well. Let's see here. We've walked through adjusting the size. As I said, this map itself did not have a grid on it, so you can, of course, set it to whatever size you want. Right now, obviously, the road's about 15 foot wide. Before, we had it about 20 feet wide. We did walk through the dungeon, or putting a map in that does not fit the grid, and walking through how to fit it into the grid and how to move the map, make it into a drawing, etc. Again, if this is a little bit too much information to take in at once, keep in mind we do have this little instructional stream will be available in the video on demand down below once we're finished with the stream. Of course, the Monday following, like this Monday, all of our streams from last week will be posted on the YouTube. So eventually on our YouTube channel, you'll be able to come back and revisit these Roll20 tutorials. Also, feel free to go through Twitch and YouTube to find other tutorials. There's tons of great tutorials out there for Roll20. But as I mentioned, I'm just trying to go with the basics for those that are wanting to perhaps get into a VTT. As I mentioned, Roll20 is kind of the standard for the industry that most players and most DMs use. Again, there are plenty of wonderful VTTs out there, but I just happen to use Roll20 a lot. I've got almost 7,000 hours now invested in it, and for me and my players, it works. It does everything that we need it to do, and it's they're updating it all the time. Every day that I log in, well, not every day, but at least every week, once or twice a week that I log in, there's a hey, will you take this survey and see what test these new things that we're trying for Roll20, and so they're working really hard to update it all the time. So that's about it. I really don't want to go into anything else too in-depth tonight. For that, we've talked about how to make maps, to make your different pages. We've talked about moving the players from map to map. We've talked about putting maps in that aren't grids. Talked about putting maps in that do have grids. We've talked about the different sizes of the maps and the different general page settings. Again, eventually we will get into dynamic lighting, but we're not really going to touch on that for a little while because there's a few other things that we want to walk through eventually and work through with Roll20 before we start working on the dynamic lighting, because we're looking really to get you started as soon as possible to playing a game. So right now, you have a way to get the characters, monsters, and the PCs into the game. You have a way to make your handouts for the players, and you have a way to get your maps onto there for your players as well, and you can move players from map to map. So as of right now, with that basic information, you should be able to go through and run a game of Dungeons and Dragons on Roll20. If you have a few friends that want to try it out, maybe get them in. The way you invite the players to the game is you do have in your starting chat window, you will have an invite link right down here that you can copy and paste to invite the players to the game. What you can also do is we're going to exit out of this game real quick and click exit game. on the home page, like right here, thanks for playing the test run. This is our test run room. We'll click on that to take us back to the home page of the test run room. You can also invite the players by either email or copying this link, which is the same one that's inside the room as well. You can send them that, and it will enable them to join your game room to start playing D&D on Roll20. And I believe we mentioned that as well last week also. You can also edit the time of when your next game will be. If you want to put it up on put a public game up on Roll20 for people that are part of the community for Roll20, you can also make the game public or private. You can put the different types of games in there, a description of your campaign. If you do happen to buy different maps, adventures, things of that nature through the Roll20 marketplace, you can also add those through the game add-on. And of course, your players that are members of the have joined the game room, you can always talk with them for the game discussion here on the Roll20 app here on the browser. And you can also post topics back and forth, and everyone will get a notification through their email, unless they have the notifications turned off, about the different topics and be able to chat with everyone there. So I think, let's see, I think we don't have any other questions in the chat. So I think that's going to go ahead and bring us to the end of today's Dungeons and Deliberations. As I mentioned, if you're not a member of our community yet, you can drop down below, check the About section there. You'll be able to join our Discord, our community Discord, by clicking on the Discord panel. You can also find our social media links with our link tree there that's underneath our social media. As I mentioned, we will be having a merch store pop up here soon. We will have some donation links, things like that, if you like the content and want to see more of it. But that's going to end our stream for tonight. Don't forget, tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Eastern, we will be having our Tavern Talks, which will be finishing up our Meet the Collective tomorrow evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking with Dantishin, who we'll get a little information about him, kind of find out about his history of D&D and what he enjoys about the game, some of his other interests and such. If you haven't had a chance to check out our discussion with Design Lizard, that is now up on YouTube. Discussion last week with Otter is in the video on demand below. And then tune in tomorrow to talk and meet Dantishin. Until then, everyone have a safe evening and happy adventuring. We'll see you next time.